jealous with. Currently, everyone is talking about her. But I came across this video of her.
I mean, does Bob Hope do
Well,
it?
why-
Does Bing Crosby do it? Does Mick Jagger
what
do
the
it?
hell? Come on.
No, what I'm saying right now is...
Bob Hope and
First
Bing
of all,
Crosby.
these aren't your dad's celebrities and these aren't your dad's Republic. I'm saying right now that this is something that I know is right, and you guys, I need to be on the right side of history, and if he doesn't win, then at least I tried.
Bottom line right now, I'm terrified. I'm the guy that went out and bought armored cars.
I worry for her safety as much as anybody does.
I need to do this. Dad, I need you to forgive me for doing it because I'm doing it.
What was the first thing that came to your head as you watched that interaction between her and her parents going back and forward?
Seems like they have a really healthy ability to communicate and have mutual respect for each other. I think they were more about needing her to be safe. And while obviously that's a value of hers, it was, I need my voice to be heard because I'm passionate about these things. And for her, that was worth the risk. And so I think as a parent, it's being able to say, can I trust my kid enough to know that what they're experiencing, the fact that they could communicate that, I mean, it's beautiful.
When someone has been silenced for so long, there are certain things that happen, body language wise, that they would like project to other people.
All about how you go inward. So your shoulders are hunched over, you look down. And then when you do have that more confidence, your shoulders are pushed back, you make more eye contact, and you just kind of project this level of like, I'm taking up the space and I'm good with that.
So like over the past year, I've had conversations here on this podcast with Crystal about my past and my relationship with my dad. And one of the things that I shared here is that I've always had issues with like talking to my dad, just in general. I spent years in therapy, but for some reason, whenever my dad is around, my stutter comes back. And just some background, I used to have a really bad stutter, went to therapy and learned that my stutter was a manifestation of the trauma that I went through as a child. Now that I'm talking fine, that's why I have a whole podcast so that I can keep talking about this. But for some reason, when I see my dad, the stutter comes back, which means he's part of the trigger. However, he was visiting last month, and I finally spoke up where I didn't have a single stutter. So basically, it took me 14 years away from him to be able to speak up for the first time without stuttering, getting my thoughts across, and being very clear as to why I felt the way that I was feeling at that moment, and he actually listened. So today, I want to talk to Crystal about this. I've shared some background as to like what happened, but just for the sake of recap, I want to share a little bit. So my dad is visiting, and like one of the things that he did was he just called me one day. He's like, "Everyone is visiting me, and you have not visited. I'm seeing everyone's kids coming to go to visit them because my family, when they travel, everyone travels into the oldest brother's house, and they just hang out for like months, not do anything. They just have fun, they barbecue, they eat. But I wasn't showing up. Everyone's kids were showing up. However, I was calling him every now and then, just checking in. But apparently he was angry that I wasn't showing up. So he did, something that I would always expect he would do, which is just lash out. He called, went off, and then for some reason, I just took a deep breath. I'm like, okay, look, this is not going to happen. If you want to talk to me, we're going to talk. But if you're going to scream at me, I'm just like, I've been living in the US for 14 years. You've never picked up the phone and check on me. Usually it's always transactional. It's always just like disciplinary, but it's not like we don't have conversations like other people do. And I'm saying, you are here comparing me with all these kids. You don't even know their reality. You don't know the relationship that they had. And for some reason, for the first time, he actually listened, which was the weird experience. I remember saying, "Hello, are you there?" Because he wasn't saying anything.
Yeah.
Normally, he just jumps and says something. And today, I want to know, just based off your experience, like, why did it take so long?
That's a pretty complex question.
Right.
But I would say on your end, kind of my gut reaction is that you were still a lot in the feelings of what happened in your childhood and beyond, that you weren't able to potentially have the conversation in a way that he could hear you. I don't know if maybe you would be more defensive, or if you would just withdraw too quickly, or even avoid what you're truly feeling.
Right.
And so I would say all those years it took you to a place to where you could formulate what you wanted to say. And then potentially on his end, because there was this large gap and because you advocated for yourself, it clicked something to where he listened.
So like in that moment, what did you think that I said specifically that made him listen?
I wonder if you didn't go into like blaming, like if you went into like owning your piece of it in terms of like, here's why I'm not engaging, or here's why you're not hearing from me.
Right.
And it wasn't like necessarily focused on him. It was like relaying what your experience was, and maybe he didn't feel attacked.
Let's say, at that moment, it didn't go the way that I explained. Like, what can someone do maybe at the child? Because if it didn't go well, I probably would have just ghosted, because that's what I normally do. We go years without talking.
Sure.
But this is still new to me. Like, I'm gonna say, okay, let me make sure that I actually be intentional in how I talk to him, because that felt good for me to be able to share how I was feeling, somewhat a little bit healing as well, because I've never experienced that.
Yeah, I think you kind of set maybe a little bit of an emotional boundary too, with like, hey, I'm willing to have the conversation if you're willing to not scream at me. And so maybe even starting it off that way allowed him to see like, oh yeah, I am raising my voice. Is that necessary? And then for you to say like, I can end the conversation because I don't feel respected. And so I wonder if even setting that emotional boundary clicked something for him too. Yeah.
So like, how does that look like? Because I know for me, like, and I'm going to take myself out of it, but like in general, when someone has been silenced for so long, there are certain things that happen, body language wise, that they would like project to other people. And I try to empathize with my dad, because I know he doesn't have the best childhood as well. And so I want to kind of do like a little practice where we can identify how does that look like. Let's say, I have my own experience. I know it's not everyone's experience. Sometimes when I talk, I sound like a spoiled child who's just like, you don't give me attention, because I know I was taken care of as a kid growing up. I was flown everywhere in the world to go play sports and all that. But I think deep down, I just wanted just the attention that I didn't get. Now I give to my kids like tenfold. The name of your company.
That's
look at
right.
that. Oh, now that makes sense. Is that why you name your company? I know we're getting sidetracked.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, cool. So like, how exactly does that look like on a person's body when they've been silent for so long and now they're, feel like it's coming out some way for them to share, something that's within their heart that they need to talk about?
Yeah, I think we may have touched on this at a previous podcast too before, but I think it's all about how you go inward. So your shoulders are hunched over, you look down, and then when you do have that more confidence, your shoulders are pushed back, you make more eye contact, and you just kind of project this level of like, I'm taking up the space and I'm good with that.
And I want to know, like, as a clinician, like, how can you like help someone in that position? Let's say you were talking to your parent and you were feeling all that internal chaos. How can they get out of there? I know you talked about taking space, but sometimes when you find yourself in that position, it's really hard to even imagine yourself out of it. Because I feel like for me, I go back to that little child, which I see this figure that I'm afraid of. Now I'm towering over my dad still, but like it's I feel like I can go back into that space, and I want to understand why does that happen, and then how can someone get out of that, like, to when they find themselves into that position. Because I feel like there's some kind of grief into that process as well, because you lose that person who can take up space. When you find yourself in that, how do you get out of it? Yeah,
I mean, I think honestly, that's what the beauty of individual therapy is inside of a room with a therapist, is because you get to practice those conversations. And then if you do get dysregulated, you can practice like what it looks like to do the grounding skills or whatever to make you come back down. And then you do practice those hard conversations, or where if you notice you're having a body response, you practice it with someone who's more emotionally safe. Like, so let's say it's taken outside of the therapy room. It could be with a best friend or a partner. And then the more practiced you feel with hard conversations, then you approach someone who might be more intimidating or you have more of a history with that creates that. And so, but I think the practice component of it is important.
So like, how does one become aware that, they actually need to do this practice?
I think it's honestly just being able to notice and having that level of self-awareness. And when you can notice and observe something within yourself, then you're like, okay, let me go and try and figure this out in a different space. Right.
And like, how much do like boundaries and like building walls actually play in that? Because you kind of touched on boundaries a few times here. And I remember a few days ago when we had a Zoom call, you like talked about just like proactive boundaries and also building walls, like how does those two things play out in someone's like personal growth and dealing with a trauma that happened to them, but now they're living with that individual that caused that trauma. But you also share that there's a fine line where, the person who's traumatized is avoiding this person to cause that it's costing to the other person who actually caused that trauma. They're trying to fix that relationship, but the person that's traumatized is not available because they don't want to deal with it. They're always disappearing. So I want to know, like, how does that dynamic play? Like the proactive, like aspect of building boundaries, and then also the actual reactive version of building walls.
Yeah. So that's also a big topic, but I think with boundaries, they're there to help kind of keep you from being separate from others, because we all take up our own space. Like you can tell when someone's encroaching on your physical space, right? But then there's the emotional side too, where we want to have psychological safety. And so boundaries are important with a relationship that's more challenging or has a traumatic history. There could be some physical components to that, to where it's like, hey, I may only meet this person in a coffee shop. Like I don't want to meet with them in a house because I feel like they could bully me emotionally or whatever that might mean. But also, like, if the conversation gets to where they're becoming angry or they're beginning to become insulting, then it's like, hey, I can remove myself from this conversation because this is no longer healthy to me. And so it's being able to recognize, like, I don't want to be completely avoidant, because then I'm not even addressing things and I'm pretending like I'm okay, when in reality there's this whole layer of things I'm not yet willing to do anything about. And so you don't want to go there, but also if you have that level of self-awareness in the moment, you can recognize, okay, they've now crossed a line and have become insulting or disrespectful. And so I'm going to either say something to create a boundary, or I can remove myself because this is no longer like productive.
Yeah, so I just said productive. I said serving, and I'm still being self-centered. That's not what she's meaning. It's not. It's because a lot of people say this doesn't serve me, and I'm out.
Sure.
And I do want to talk about, when it comes to boundaries on both aspects, like what language can like listeners on the podcast look out for on both sides. I mean, on the parent side, and then on the the individual that's traumatized. This could be anyone, but in this example, it's parent and a child. Yeah.
So I say with your examples, you became dysregulated, and so internally you were like, I'm now flooded with, whether it's past memories or even just the emotional experience of what I'm dealing with right now. And so then you backed off, and then it created the space for him to be like, but you don't understand. Here's what I did. Like, and then he went on his long list, which just creates that further gap between you. And so it's okay, if I notice I'm becoming dysregulated, then it's being able to say, hey, this is what's happening for me right now. I need to pause this conversation because I'm either going to withdraw or lash back out. And that's not helpful for either of us. And so in that moment, it's recognizing what's happening internally for you, and then being able to say, what do I need in this moment? Do I need a break? Do I need to pause and say, hey, I don't even think the rest of this day I'm going to have a productive conversation. Let's, talk again tomorrow or in a couple of days or whatever. But it's like paying attention to what's happening for you and then asking for that. And then if they don't respect that, then you set a different boundary that's like, hey, I hear that you don't want to pause this conversation, but that's what I'm needing. And so we're going to have to do that.
Wow.
So you move from kind of inviting and saying, hey, I'm trying to get you to understand. And if they don't, then you move to more direct.
Wow. My childhood trauma is like, are you sure you can say all that?
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's why the therapy room is so good, because you can practice that. Yeah.
It's like, the denial aspect plays such a huge part. Like how can a parent identify that themselves? Because I know, for example, a lot of parents find themselves in there where like, well, I am the parent here. Like, I don't think that happened. And then the person who had that experience is just sitting there like, well, like, I remember this. I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
And then that back and forth always takes away from what the parent is hoping to accomplish.
Yeah. So there's an analogy that I once heard, and I wish I could give credit, but I don't remember where I heard it from. But if let's say that you are in a house that has multiple floors, and let's say you are on the top floor and your dad is on the middle floor, and then you have a sibling who's in the basement. And then an earthquake happens. And you are all in different places in the house. And then after the earthquake is over, you go outside of the house and you're like, well, this happened to me when I was upstairs and this is what I felt. And then your dad said, well, no, that's not what happened. This is what I felt because I was in the kitchen. And then your sibling said something about what they experienced in the basement. You all experienced the same thing, but you were all in different rooms and on different levels of a house, which then had a different effect of how you felt the earthquake. And so typically when people go into a difficult conversation, they go into it with, I need to hear you say, oh, you're right and I was wrong. When it's not necessarily about a right or wrong. It's about, can you respect that this is the experience that I have and the way that I remember it? And then if there is discord between that, it's like, can I say what I need to say and you say what you need to say? And is there a way that we can both respect where we're both coming from? Does that make sense?
No, yeah. In my head, I was saying common ground the whole time you were saying that. Basically establishing the common ground is acknowledging everyone's experiences and then figuring out what's real for everyone.
Yes.
And then trying to figure out how can we all agree on one thing and then establish common ground. That's hard as heck.
It is hard.
I'm not gonna.
It is hard, absolutely.
Because I want to be heard and I want things that happen to me to be acknowledged. But sometimes, I have empathy for my dad specifically. I know that he doesn't see things the way that I see it. I know that he cares for his kids, but at the end of the day, it's like the dude is so stubborn. And then I was like, it doesn't matter what you say sometimes. It's just like, just shake him a little bit and just get him out of his own reality. But like, is there any other way that when it comes to the denial part, let's say in my own example, like you have someone who just would not budge. Is it better to just, all right, I did my best. I think I'll move on. Or should you actually try to figure out ways to find common ground with that individual?
I mean, you can only push for so long, right? And so if someone is set on this was the way that it was and I'm not budging on that, I mean, no amount of trying to move around that, no matter how great at communicating you are. And so it's getting to a point where it's like, I wish that you would hear this differently, but because you can't, here's whatever boundary needs to happen next. And I think you have this expectation that's like, we may never get to a type of relationship that I desire, because we're on opposite sides of the spectrum. And it's like, okay, so if that's the truth and I still want to relate in some way, can I be okay with the surface relationship? Can I still have this interaction, but it's not the depth that I prefer? And then being able to kind of sit in that space. And maybe there's some level of maturity or growth for them down the way, but I don't think you can force anyone to hear or do anything.
Right. And then you said something during our Zoom call. You said a boundary protects the relationship from resentment or protects you from harm. And I know you probably don't remember because it was such a busy day that day. But then I went back to our transcript. I was like, I don't think she even remember saying that. But I don't even remember her saying this. But this is really good. Like, can you go a little bit deeper into that? Like, a boundary protects the relationship from resentment or it protects you from harm. Like, can you dissect that on the resentment side and then also the harm aspect of it?
Yeah. So sometimes I think with boundaries, we go into it saying like, I know this is what I'm supposed to do. But then maybe there's not a great level of communication about why, or I don't know, maybe some meaning behind it. And so then what happens or can happen is this boundary is set, but your expectation is that they have a different level of understanding. And when they don't interact with you in the way that you desire, it creates resentment. So you're kind of expecting them to read your mind and know exactly why there is a boundary that's being set. And so when you don't communicate, and regardless of how they hear it, then I think resentment has the opportunity to build because you're expecting them to do something that they don't have the awareness of, if that makes sense.
Wow. Yeah, no, yeah, that makes perfect sense because, to my point, like how can a parent be aware of all these things that are happening, but they're genuinely trying to build like relationship with you? But then I know the other side of this quote is like, or it protects you from harm. Is that when that happens, when you establish those strong boundaries to protect yourself from more harm on this individual who is not aware or refuse to take the resources to become aware?
Yes. And so that's where I think the ghosting isn't great because you're ghosting, not giving them an outline of like why you're removing communication. And so then that can build resentment on them for you, but then also it's this expectation on your part. But then the harm piece is if you communicate and you say, hey, this is what's going to happen and you probably won't like it, but here's what I need. And then that removes you from the ability to be harmed.
Gotcha. Wow. That's deep and a lot of work as well. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. And that's where, I mean, I just think communication is so key because they can't understand if you don't communicate what's happening.
Right. And so like, let's say someone who is going through, something that I'm also experiencing. Like, let's say they're getting ready to have a conversation. Like, they had a conversation, it went great. I want to have this experience again. Like, what can they do to be ready for that conversation? Maybe this could be a 1 thing or 2, 5, I don't know. But like, what can they do exactly beforehand to get themselves ready so that they don't get let down again when they go in with the expectation of like, this is how it went well the last time. I'm going to hopefully goes well again with that expectation into this new conversation.
Well, it's challenging because you can't control the other end of the conversation.
Right.
So you can't have an expectation that it won't go poorly or you won't be disappointed, because then I think you're setting yourself up for not seeing a piece of it. But I think role play is huge. Again, whether that's in the therapy room or whether that's someone that you trust. And then I'm a big fan of, like, if it's a big conversation that's really important to you, what would it look like for you to write down what you want to say beforehand? And that way it's kind of scripted in your head, and not as I need to sound like a robot, but as I hear my touch points that I don't want to miss. And then also it helps when your brain already has kind of wrapped around what it wants to say. Then when emotions are higher, you're like, okay, hold on a minute. I know that I'm feeling this way, but here's what the point I wanted to get across. And so then you're focused a lot on the content, not allowing the emotions to disrupt that.
Right.
But then also when you write it down, you can see it externalized out of your head. And then you can say, oh, well, that actually sounds kind of harsh. Maybe I don't want to say it that way. And so then you can kind of edit so that it comes across in a better way. So yeah, I think those are 2 ways that you can prepare for it.
Yeah, and like even in the business world, a lot of CEOs say this. They would say that the person who write things down usually is the person who will go into the highest positions in that company. It's like as simple as that. Just write it down, because when you write things down, you see it, you visualize it, you put yourself in that scenario. Yeah, and sometimes you're more empathetic when you deal with people or conversations.
Yeah,
I do want to talk about a few examples, and again, thanks for dissecting this with me. But I saw some examples on the internet. For example, Taylor Swift. Currently, everyone is talking about her. But I came across this video of her.
I mean, just Bob Hope do
Well,
it?
why-
Did Bing Crosby do it? Just Mick Jagger
what the
do it?
hell? Come
No, what
on.
I'm saying right now is
Bob Hope and
First
Bing
of all,
Crosby.
these aren't your dad's celebrities and these aren't your dad's Republicans. I'm saying right now that this is something that I know is right, and you guys, I need to be on the right side of history, and if he doesn't win, then at least I tried.
Bottom line right now, I'm terrified. I'm the guy that went out and bought armored cars.
I worry for her safety as much as anybody does.
I need to do this. I just need you to forgive me for doing it, because I'm doing it.
What was the first thing that came to your head as you watched that interaction between her and her parents going back and forth?
Yeah, I thought, I agree. It seems like they have a really healthy ability to communicate and have mutual respect for each other. I think from when I watched it, it looked like they were more about needing her to be safe.
Right.
And while obviously that's a value of hers, it was, I need my voice to be heard because I'm passionate about these things. And for her, that was worth the risk.
Right.
And so I think as a parent, it's being able to say, can I trust my kid enough to know that what they're experiencing trumps my need for their safety?
Right.
But the fact that they could communicate that, I mean, is beautiful, honestly.
No, absolutely. Like something that the dad said was when she started comparing her to all these past legends and saying that they kept it to themselves. They were worried about ticket sales and making sure people show up. I was genuinely pissed. I was like, oh my God, she's about to go in. But she was like, no, this is different. And I was like, and she was like, this is your thing, not me. And I was like, oh wow, that's a new response. I would be like, F this and probably flip the table, because I hate to be compared with other people.
Sure.
And I love the way she handled it. But like, what do you have to say about that as a therapist, just watching that specific? Because I know a lot of kids in general. I don't want to say kids, but us adults, we always kids to someone. But whenever our parents compare us to someone else, usually that's like, it's really hard to shake away from, and because it gets to you, because they know you your whole life. Yeah. So I feel like, in our own psyche, we hear some truth in that, but it's so hard to accept it. But you as a clinician, is that a healthy thing? Or like, how can a person deal with that?
Well, I mean, think about it. As people compare ourselves on social media, is that healthy?
Nope.
Nope.
I hate it.
So, I mean, comparison in any sense of the form, like we don't know anyone's full story or what it took to get to where they are, what they're
Right.
doing. And so I don't think comparison is helpful at all.
No, I hate it. It has been my whole life because I came from such a massive family. Like grandpa, 3 wives, dad has 2 wives, kids everywhere. So
Yeah.
you're always being compared with someone.
Yeah.
And I had to run away from the entire continent just to not deal with it.
I did want to say one more thing about the video, though. Is
perfect.
one thing I observed too is their body language never became aggressive. Like she stayed, like I think, kind of sitting Indian style on the couch.
She was sitting,
very
just
relaxed,
watching.
and so did they. They stayed leaned back in their chairs, and to me, that was so great because they didn't become threatening, even though it felt very serious.
Right.
And I think that helps a lot too, because when people get agitated or they feel overstimulated, their body responds and they allow it to come out because anger feels more powerful, but they didn't do that. And so I thought that was really good too.
Wow, that's actually deep. Anger feels more powerful.
But it's not.
Yeah, I know. Because when someone is angry, they tend to raise, their pitch goes up.
Yes.
And then the entire body's like
Yes.
trying to take over the entire space.
Right.
And it's so exhausting.
Yeah,
too.
and it shrinks people, right,
Yeah.
around you. But that's where it feels the powerfulness, but that's not actually true power.
Right. If you're a parent listening to this, I hope you can take these as a way to navigate those conversations as well.
And that's why too, it's like I'm sure people have heard is like, why do you get on the eye level of your kid when you're having a conversation? Or like you can't shout something across the room and expect them to listen because they're not engaged with you.
Right.
And so that's why you kneel down. That's why you sit next to them. And I mean, I don't know if you've heard this too, but if you want your teenager to open up, go on a car ride. And if they're not looking at you directly in the eyes, you might hear some things that you've been wanting to hear from them because they don't feel threatened in a car environment.
Wow. Well, I would definitely go home today and kneel at Mercy and talk to him because, this past few weekends, he's back to school. He's not happy about it. And he's been like verbally letting me know how he feels about school. I took him to his new school and he was like, I don't like the vibe here. I was like, man, you better get your, like, the vibe? Who cares about the vibe? And he's just been kind of throwing a tantrum about that.
Well, tell him he needs to take his vibe and insert it into the school so it could become better.
There you go. He's been saying that, he's saying the school is haunted. Like he hates going to school. And I feel for him because I was that kid too. But as a parent, I'm saying you have to go to school. Like you need to, like, it's too soon for him to hate school this much. Like he verbally hates it. So now he says no to everything. And I notice myself, I'm like in the living room area and yelling at him all the time because I'm getting frustrated too. Like it's like I'm trying to like be like the soft parent, but it's like I was like, hey, Mercy, get here right now. And he doesn't listen. He just ignores us. So thank you for that tip because that just went past my head. I would make sure I'm like right in front of him and talking to him. I guess I'm that parent that if you're a parent listening, make sure I'm not doing that to him. So again, thank you for that. Is there anything from that conversation that you picked up from Taylor Swift and her parents as they have the conversation? Because one of the things that I picked up was the fear aspect. The dad I can tell he's genuinely feared, especially when he said that he's the one who has to go pick up the armored vehicle. Yeah. Like that's scary, knowing that your daughter is being stalked so much that you have to have, very protective cars to make sure that her safety is guaranteed. Yeah. Like, what do you have to say about that? Maybe something else that you picked up that I did not.
Yeah. So one thing that she said was that this is very important to me. And I think she may have said it a couple times if I remember correctly. But I think, again, that highlights, like, I hear what you're saying, but I need you to hear what I'm saying too. Right.
Wow. That is such a hard boundary because it's me and Mercy right now. He's trying to tell me like what he believes. Yeah. And I was like, no, I am right. You need to go to school. So, but thank you for that, by the way. So I got a bunch of questions from these platforms. And the first one, let me see if I can find it. The first question, she said, and again, I don't want to share their names because some of them were kind of DM'd to me privately. Someone said, when a parent shifts from the blustering to hurt victim, after you stand up, what's going on and how do you respond without getting pulled into a triangle? And I say parents. And we've kind of touched on this. And then I put some notes for myself, which is the drama triangle, responsibility, versus rescue / referee. Like, what do you have to say about that?
I mean, I think validation and acknowledgement goes a long way. And then my other thought would be, was there language that felt attacky?
Right.
I know it's not really a word, but
Hey, it is a word here.
and so would be, how is it communicated? And then if they're shifting into this victim piece is like, can you acknowledge their experience without the need to rescue?
I like that. And then another question is, someone says, seeing a parent age can stir grief and guilt. How do we honor that and our limits? And my note was like, how do you like differentiate compassion from compliance? Like, as a therapist, what do you have to say about that?
Say that last piece again.
Basically, for my observation or understanding from that question was, I think she was trying to figure out how to differentiate compassion and compliance. Because the question was like, seeing a parent age can stir grief and guilt.
Yeah.
How do we honor that aging, but then also have our limits?
Yeah. I think honestly, it's where the boundaries come into play, is where it can stir up grief. So allow the grief, all the feelings that come with that, allow that to surface when you're not with the parent, work through that. But then also recognize, okay, so when they do eventually pass, will you have regret about how you handled the aging process? And if the answer is yes, then what does that boundary look like? Like, does it go again to, I can show up in these ways because that feels right? Or if it doesn't, then it's like, okay, where's my line to where when they do pass, how will I feel okay with how I responded to it?
Right.
Like the process right before. And so it's like and that's going to look different for everybody. And there's no right or wrong. And it can look cold to some people, but for you, it's if you're honestly surveying and looking and saying, based on my experience and based on where a relationship is today, here's where I find my line. And when they pass, I know that I can move through that grief with peace and knowing that I did the right thing.
Wow. That's like a whole topic that you just opened up. And I'll not go flying in. We've come to the end of this conversation, and I want to like just kind of close with like a tight solution. And like in one sentence, like, how can someone try to like, repair a broken relationship? This could be the parent or the child, without like self-abandoning themselves in the process. And you kind of touched on the grief aspect of that and parents aging. But like, if we were to give someone some advice, what would you say to that? Yeah.
So I would start with your own individual work first.
Right.
And I know you told me to do it in one sentence, but.
Oh, it's fine. I know.
So start with your own individual work. Get to the place where you can feel when you're becoming dysregulated and you know how to back out of that. And then also once you've done that individual work, then you approach and say, hey, I'd like to address some things with you. And here are kind of some key takeaways and how it would benefit you and how it would benefit us.
Right.
And so then being able to communicate to them the benefits allows them to see like, oh, they're just not wanting to come and yell at me, or they're not just want to come and tell me why their childhood was so horrible or whatever, but it's, oh, okay, there is a point to this that benefits the both of us. And a lot of the times people can be a little bit more responsive and even hear criticisms.
Right. Wow. And for me personally, just to close this, I think one step that I wish I would have taken sooner was to go to therapy, because I had so many opportunities throughout my whole life. I remember back in my early 20s, I was told that I needed to see a therapist. I went to healthcare, a doctor, because I was having like crazy heart, like I thought I was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
One time I actually had Bell palsy because I was having that continuously. Like I always have like racing heart rate to a point that it would get so high, and I'll rush to the hospital, and they're like, "You're fine. You were just stressed. Maybe it's not, go and see a psychiatrist." And I looked it up, and it was like medication, and I was like, I don't want that. Well, unfortunately, they weren't giving me options. I wish I could have asked more questions. Like, is there any other option where I don't have to take medication, but I need to talk to someone? And I had so many of those scenarios to a point that I had Bell palsy. My body literally shut off. So for me personally, I wish I would have taken that step sooner of seeing a therapist and like understanding like, why the heck I'm young at the prime of my life and feel like I'm having a heart attack all the time. But apparently it was just stress and just like manifesting into all these different stressors. And again, now that I'm saying this, I feel I feel like I have to ask you a question like, what are the stressors, just to close out this conversation, that people are seeing today? As a therapist, I'm sure you see different stressors apart from that. How does that look like, so that people can identify that and be like, maybe it's time for me to go talk to someone about this?
Yeah, I mean, headaches, overly being fatigued every day.
Check.
Yeah, not getting great sleep outside of having an infant in the house.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, your sleep's always interrupted. Obviously, relational breakdown with people around you. If you're finding that you're isolating, if you're overeating, if you're undereating, if you're have high blood pressure, if you have digestive issues, if you notice like hormonally things are off balance, especially for women. If you have a physical symptom, obviously not all of it's linked to mental health, but there are many, many, many physical symptoms that can be linked to how you're processing or not processing what you're going through personally.
Wow. It's so fascinating what the nervous system is always doing. Just giving you all the signs physically to remind us that you need therapy, in like the weirdest way possible. And then one book that I want to recommend is The Body Keeps the Score. The book actually educated me on a lot of signs that I was having that I had no idea. It was just like a caution for me to go and, figure out how to work through all of my past experiences. But again, thank you so much for being here today and helping me and our listeners dissect this mysterious issue of parental issues and just relational issues. I think a lot of people are going to find value in it, but thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.